Welcome to the Sunflower Conversations, where we explore the hidden disability sunflower and its role in supporting people with hidden disabilities.
Welcome to the Sunflower Conversations. My name is Chantal and I'm your host today, and joining me is my colleague Lynn Smith, who is the Programme Director in the US, and we are both delighted to be joined by Shaylee Raye Hunter, who lives in Utah in America. So welcome, Shaylee. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me. I truly appreciate being here this morning.
Shaylee lives with several invisible health conditions, such as chronic intestinal pseudo-obstruction, CIPO, gastroparesis, and short bowel syndrome.
We're going to learn all about what they are, how it's affected Shaylee, and how you manage your everyday activities and the barriers that you face. But first of all, I think for anybody who's listening on a podcast, we need to do a little bit of an audio description. So I am a brown skinned female with brown, very curly hair, and I'm wearing glasses. Lynn, would you like to do an audio description of yourself?
Sure, I am a white female with brown hair and bangs.
And for anybody who's listening in the UK, bangs is a fringe.
Oh, excellent. I didn't
And
know
then,
that.
yeah. And then Shaylee, please. I think the description of you is probably is more exciting than the descriptions of ourselves.
Of course. I'm kind of that in between ashy blonde hair with bright blue eyes, pale skin, and I am wearing a crown.
And it is one heck of a crown. It is big and it is blingy. It looks like it's got a pink jewel in it. Has it got a pink jewel?
They're like iridescent, so like they pick up colors, which I love. So like whatever I'm wearing, it will just kind of pick up that color.
It's lovely, really lovely. So let's talk about why you're wearing it. You are Mrs. Petite Utah, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So can you just tell us a little bit about that? I know that beauty pageants in America are very, very popular. So can you just explain a little bit about that? And I don't think I've ever seen one where it's petite before. It's normally without the word petite. So I'm interested to hear a little bit about that competition.
Yeah, so Petite USA is just a pageant system for girls under 5'6". So it takes away that a height difference and gives us an opportunity to compete where other pageant systems may require a height requirement. And so I love that I get to stand next to beautiful women who are around my same height, and I don't feel like intimidated by somebody else who, is a couple feet taller than me standing next to me in heels also. And so I'm super excited to go compete at nationals in July to hopefully win the Petite USA title.
And are you using your platform now as having won this title to drive forward your passion, which is advocating for women's rights and disability visibility?
Yes, so most pageant systems require you to have like a social impact or something that you're working on during your title to better a community. And so mine is definitely influenced by my life and just invisible disabilities and advocating for people to embrace their medical devices and their invisible disabilities and just really go after what they want in life and not be defined by their illness.
So can we move on to what your illnesses are? You just mentioned medical devices, so we would like to hear about that as we have our chat today. But can you go through, and we want to understand a bit more about the three disabilities that Lynn so eloquently described at the beginning of the call, not the call, but the podcast.
Yeah, so I was first hospitalized at 6 months old, and they discovered that I did have chronic intestinal pseudo-obstruction. likely known as CIPO. This is where the intestinal like muscles don't fully relax and move things through the digestive system. So throughout my life, I just had a hard time, getting all the nutrients that I needed, which led me to having my first feeding tube at 2 years old. And then I've just constantly been in and out of the hospital, trying to get my intestines to work, giving bowel rests, taking different medications to get it moving. Um, there's no cure for SIPO, and so it was really just like, what's the best way to manage the symptoms? Which eventually led to me having gastroparesis from my intestines not working. It like slowly moved into my stomach, and so that was fun. Gastroparesis is just your stomach just can't empty regularly. It empties slowly, and so a lot of people have a hard time, still obtaining those nutrients. Sometimes, being nauseous, not being able to eat a lot, things like that. Um, and then when I was 16, I actually had my ostomy surgery. So I am a huge advocate for ending like stigmas around ostomy bags and bringing awareness to that as well. And so after my ostomy bag, I still had issues with my SIPO and just, navigating my intestines that weren't working. They were, really stretched out from not being able to move and whatnot. So was about 7 years ago that they did a total colectomy and removed most of my intestine besides 20 centimeters, which left me with short bowel syndrome. Since then, I haven't really been in and out of the hospital as much, which has been super beneficial, but I am dependent on a feeding tube on TPN 10 hours a day. And so we all know the risk factors of TPN ruining your liver, potentially like losing access for your veins and stuff with that. So they have talked about an intestinal transplant through Nebraska Medical. And so we are looking into that as things may decrease in my health.
That's an awful lot. And from such a tiny age as well that you've been living and combating the symptoms. You said everybody knows what a TPN is, but I don't think everybody does. So can you take us back to basics and just describe exactly what that means?
Yeah, so TPN is called total parental nutrition. It's just a feeding tube that goes in your arm or in your chest that goes into your heart. And then you do like IV medication that gives you all your nutrients once a day. Most people are on it sometimes for 24 hours a day, 12 hours. I'm on it for 10. Just kind of depends on how your body can process it. But yeah, it gives me all my nutrition, fluids, everything like that. So that is literally my life source right there.
And the whole process of eating, that for many people is just a normal everyday activity that you don't even think about when you just pick something up, put it in your mouth, you chew it, and it works its way through its body. For you, what would that have been like? What would you have had to consider before you started to enjoy a meal with your friends or your family?
Yeah, food was always a hard thing growing up, especially like in school. Um, everybody's sitting at the lunch table and you either bring your lunch from home or you grab lunch and then they make you choose like all the food groups and you get milk and I didn't do really well with like dairy or, vegetables, things like that. I didn't do well with like breads. Like there wasn't a lot of foods that like really were beneficial for me to eat other than like really like a clear or soft liquid diet. Like that was probably the most beneficial for my intestines. But I mean, there's the part of you that also like is hungry constantly because you're not getting the nutrition that you need, the proper nutrition. So you're like, I'm starving, but also like if I eat this, I know I'm going to be sick or throwing up later or, like in pain. And so it was picking my battles for sure, especially as a child. Like, do I want to eat that? Do I want to like have the consequences later? or am I good? There were a lot of times that I chose to just fit in with the crowd and, partake of whatever was happening, whether it was at a birthday party or a family function, but I definitely sometimes paid for it later. But you got to live life and sometimes consequences happen.
Yeah. And what was that peer pressure like from your your friends and people at school? Were you really conscious of their opinion, or were you not?
I think the biggest thing is like with me being so little and petite, a lot of people judged me for not eating, like that I was bulimic or anorexic, or, those were the things that people said to me. And I was like, wait, like, that's not true. Like, I just have intestinal problems because, if I was throwing up in the bathroom at school or whatever it may be, like, obviously I'm not contagious, but, people talk, especially when you get to like junior high and high school. So those are fun years for all the rumors and drama. But I just didn't listen to him because I felt like I was more mature in what I was dealing with at that time, and nobody was truly going to understand. And obviously, if they didn't care enough to understand and they had to make up their own scenario of things, they weren't going to listen to me anyways in the first place to explain myself. Um, but at home, like my mother was always super amazing. Like I was never required to eat anything. Like if I wanted to eat, that was great. But like, we always had family dinner every night at a certain time, or Sunday dinners were big. And so um it was kind of hard, like, sitting there with my family or whatnot, but most of the time I just sit on the couch and watch TV and listen to them all upstairs in like the kitchen. Like there was like a wall, like a
Okay.
railing there. So like I could still see everybody, hear everybody. So it wasn't like I was discluded from the family, but like just not being able to look at it or stare at it and just like sit at a table not eating sometimes can be a little bit hard. But my family has always been understanding, they grew up with the abnormal lifestyle that I brought to our
Yeah.
family. So it wasn't ever different for us, I guess.
Yeah. So your family, it's normal, but it's outside of the family home, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. I feel like the worst was dating. Like trying to explain to a guy like, "Hey, let's not do like a dinner date or a lunch date. Like, can we go do an activity? Like, how about bowling or something like that." Or in Utah, we love our soda shops. We have a lot of soda shops that they just put in different flavored syrups and to soda and creams and stuff. And so that's always a fun little date that I'm down for anytime. But trying to explain that to a guy is very hard, especially on like before you go on your first date, because then they're like, well, why can't you eat? Like, do I
Mm,
actually want to go on this date now? Like, so
yeah. The
that was different.
judgment and people filling in the gaps because they don't know the full story and coming up with their own story must be very challenging for a young person,
Yeah.
especially. So that's why doing Miss Petite Utah and actually really putting yourself in front of everybody is such a big step, really, I would say, is a big move.
Yes, especially on like a national level. I've, competed in different pageant systems locally in Utah. Utah's a big pageant state. And so I'm excited to take this nationally and see what can come of it.
You are listening to the Sunflower Conversations. Remember to hit subscribe. So it seems like you did find a wonderful man and your missus. So I'm how long have you been married?
Almost 2 years. I actually met my husband while doing pageants. And in the pageant system, like I put myself out there. Like I'm like, this is who I am. I show my feeding tubes in my evening gown. I show my ostomy, for fitness or swimwear, whatever it is. Like, so he knew, like he very much well knew, like, okay, this girl obviously is not healthy or, like normal, but he was still so willing to, take that on in our marriage. And it's been difficult navigating, but I'm super glad that he was willing to give me the chance despite all the, extra baggage I have with me.
That must be so refreshing for you, though, to actually go into a relationship where that person knows the intimate things, because what we're talking about is invisible disabilities, and no one would know by looking at you all of your health challenges that you have faced and continue to face. You just wouldn't know. So that must have been a breath of fresh air for you.
Yeah, as a little girl, I always dreamed of like having a family and going to school and doing like all the normal things, everybody in life does that I was kind of told that I wouldn't be able to do or live long enough to get to. And so it was, honestly a dream come true that I found a man who was super willing to love me for who I was, especially with all my horrible dating experiences before then. So.
Yeah. So your life expectancy then was told that it would be limited.
Yes, yes, they did say due to like me not being able to absorb nutrients and with how diseased my intestines were, they were really worried that I wouldn't make it past then, like past 20. Now I'm 26, so my
You're doing
parents are
well.
super happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like there's just those conversations in the hospital about, like feeding tubes with like getting infections or, losing access and then not having that lifeline for yourself, that can be really scary. And so talking about that and navigating that was really hard. I've had a lot of different infections over the years, staph, MRSA. Um, I've had a lot of feeding tubes replaced because they're just not meant for like long-term use.
So
You know,
how can you talk us through it, if you don't mind? Only go as far as you're happy to and comfortable with. But can you talk us through it? So are you connected to it 24 hours a day and you're just being delivered the nutrients for the 10 hours a day? Or how does it work? And can you feel it going in? And you said about infections. There's so much I want to know.
no, you're good. So it's just like a little tiny tube. I have mine in my chest, and it goes into my heart. And so I just am connected for 10 hours a day. So I'm actually like connected right now. So like I, get this for 10 hours a day and then I can de-access it, but it's not like a port. Like so it's like a permanent IV that's constantly there. So I have to change the bandages, weekly to help with not getting infections and things like that. I also can't get it wet at all. So that's been fun. I don't know how to swim.
Oh, right. No, of
Um,
course.
so yeah, it's like, it's something that I have to take care of and it's a big part of my life.
Your lifeline, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. But, I've always had one, so I don't know really any different. Because I got my first one at 2 years old. So I've always had them, they break really easy. I think the longest one I've had was for 5 years, but I've also had like five different ones placed in 1 year. So, they're just not meant for a long term, which is really sad that we haven't like come further in this development.
Can you be mobile then, or do you have to stay at home for those 10 hours, or are you able to take the feeding solution with you and navigate your day? What does a day look like for you?
Yeah, so I just have it like on a pump. And then I put it in a bag, and then I can like utilize my bag and carry it around with me wherever I go. So it really doesn't hinder me from, going about my day. I usually do it while I'm sleeping so that I can take it off in the morning and then just go to work and school and not have to worry about, taking it off in the middle of the day or trying to leave it because I've left it at work before and then I've had to go back to work and grab it for, the next night. So I try to, leave it at home so I'm not losing it places.
You are listening to the Sunflower Conversations with Chantal. To learn more about the sunflower, visit our website. Details are in the show notes.
In terms of school and work, I'm picking up that there were some challenges with your peer group, and you know, your symptoms and how they manifested, and people coming to conclusions and making up their own story. Were you able to complete your schooling, and how was that?
I did actually get to graduate with my high school class. My mom was very adamant that I was going to attend school in person. She didn't want me to do online school. She was like, we're not letting your illness win or define what you can and can't do. So she was like, you're going to school. And she was like, you're very social. You need this. You need these skill sets. And so it was really hard. Like school was really hard. I didn't have a lot of friends due to being sick and, gone all the time. I had some professors that, really struggled with helping me with my health. And then I had others that were really, great. I did have one friend throughout school though. So I mean, one friend is all that matters. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I mean, I feel like I can look back and just say, like I was able to go through all of that and still graduate and not let anything, affect me leaving or switching to an online school. I got my ostomy bag while I was a junior in high school. Like that was really hard to go back to school my senior year and be like navigating the first year. They always say the first year is the hardest because you're trying to find the right system.
The ostomy bag is for your bowel, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
And presumably it takes some time to get used to applying it and keeping it maintained.
Yes, yes. So luckily I had a 504 at my high school and the office was really sweet. They let me use the staff bathrooms my senior year so that I didn't have to go into the, stalls with the other students and have them um questioning me or like noticing anything. So that was honestly like so refreshing that I didn't have to worry about that. Because then navigating college with an ostomy bag and going in the stalls, I've been asked if I'm throwing up in the bathroom when emptying my bag, and I'm like, no, but thanks for asking. Like,
And so, how old were you then? I'm sorry, I don't quite know the structure of the year groups in the US. How old were you when you got that?
16. 16.
16. That's the real age, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a hard time for anyone. So
Yeah.
that was nice that you had some support there from the school. And your parents sound wonderful, your mom, and how she just had you keep going. I think that's wonderful.
I mean, looking back now, I can really appreciate what my mom was doing for me. But in the moment, I was like, oh my gosh, I hate you so much. I was like, why are you trying to ruin my life? I was like, no, I don't want to go back to school. I don't want to do this. She made me go to school every day if I was not in the hospital
Right.
because
Okay.
my illness was not contagious. That's what she said. She was like, you're not contagious. Sorry you're sick. Sorry you didn't sleep last night. Sorry you were up sick. Like, I'm sorry, but like you're still going to school. So, I'm glad she pushed that and made that very adamant in my, life because now I can get through anything while still being sick. Like I know my limitations still, but like ultimately like if I'm having a rough day or whatever and I need something to get done, like I can do it.
And so now mentioned you are in employment. What was that like? Applying for a job, telling them, did you tell them that about your invisible disabilities, or did you wait until you got the role? How did that work?
So I kind of did different things. At first I didn't really tell people, and then if I got sick, then they kind of found out, and eventually they just kept not scheduling me, and then I wouldn't have a job, but they didn't like fire me because like they couldn't do that because of discrimination. So I just slowly got like less and less hours, which is fine. And then, I did sometimes tell people like straight up, like, this is what I have, like, if you're willing to work with me. And that didn't always work either. And so Jobs were definitely hard. I've lost a lot of jobs due to being sick or not being able to fulfill a role completely. There have been jobs that I've had to leave because they aren't good for my health either, due to like the hours or the company not willing to let me work from home on the days that I'm sick, or just different things that come up. And, if they're not willing to work and they don't care, then why should I work for somebody who won't put my health first? Because ultimately, like, my health has to come first in my life. Like, if it doesn't come first, I don't have a life. So
Exactly.
it's crazy to me that some people like don't understand that, especially in the employment world. But I have an amazing job that I love, and my company really works with my schedule, my flexibility with, doctor appointments, and if I'm sick. So I really feel like I found a gem of a job and an amazing supervisor who just understands.
Well, what they say, and it's true, is that if you can support your employees and make the workplace adjustments that they require, then the retention is obviously going to improve, because you will value that employer so much more, because you know that your needs are going to be met. So it makes sense for all employers to be much more open and willing to discuss different adjustments of how they can make sure that the employee can bring their whole self to work, whether or not it means, okay, well, on the days where you haven't slept all night, of course, it's fine, work from home, get up later, start when you can, finish later, and having that flexibility. And I think you touched on doctor's appointments as well, which are crucial, aren't they, to maintain a standard of health and being alive.
Yeah, and it's difficult because, doctor's offices are only open like 9 to 5-ish. And so like Monday through Friday, and that's when a typical job is. And then if you are like me, who has a million different specialists and, every category, and I'm following up with each one, like that's a lot of doctor appointments to, do. Or with my TPN, I have to get lab work like weekly. So I'm constantly, going into lab, or I get physical therapy as well. So I'm like, you put that on weekly or bi-weekly. And then you got therapy for just mental health, and you do that bi-weekly or weekly. And I'm like, they just add up. And I'm like, I don't understand why some employers like don't understand that. Like, I need to do this.
Yeah.
It's not like I want to do this. Like, obviously, like if I didn't have to, I wouldn't. But like, if I don't and I'm not updating my doctors or doing these appointments, like, how are they going to help me when things get bad?
What reaction do you get from other adults, members of the public, when they realize that you have invisible disabilities?
Some people always are like, "Oh, you poor thing," or like, "Wow, you're so young. You've been through a lot." Or I get some people that just look at me like shocked or like in disbelief almost. And then I always get those people that are skeptical, like they don't believe me at all. And then I'm like, "Look at my feeding tube," or like, "Here's my ostomy," and they're like, "Oh." I'm like, "Okay, but like if I didn't have those things, would you still believe me?" Like I'm not sitting here like making up a story, but just because they haven't heard of my illness because of how rare it is, or because I look so healthy, because I take care of myself and I go to these appointments and I take my medication, like they don't think I'm actually sick because I'm healthy looking.
We hear that often. Is that why you advocate for making the kind of invisible visible?
Yes, I do. I feel like, especially in school, like everybody always thought, like I was, just another girl over there, like making issues. Like, why does she have all these accommodations? Or, I actually have a handicap sticker so that when I go on campus, I don't have to walk super far because I, that's a law on my body. And I get so many weird looks when I use my handicap sticker. And I'm like, you guys just don't understand. Like, well, like, who are you to judge me? Like, it's not like I got this, like, for free, or like I had a doctor sign off on this. Like it wasn't just like something I made myself in Canva.
That's a good point, because the hidden disability sunflowers, is what's helping kind of bring that visibility to people. And hopefully our goal is to reduce that stigma. Do you think it's a valuable tool? I know you probably do because you have it on your sash. But can you explain why you have it on your sash and kind of what it's meant to you?
Yeah, so I actually heard about the Sunflower Project about maybe 2 years ago. And it was actually somebody in Ogden, Utah, who is trying to bring it to Utah, especially like to make our, community more accessible for people to come visit and travel, especially like, we have our ski resorts and things like that. So they just want to make things more accessible for everybody. And especially those invisible disabilities. So when I was competing in one of my competitions, a lady reached out to me and she goes, "Oh my gosh, have you heard about hidden disabilities, like the Sunflower Project?" And she actually gave me the cutest little gift bag of like your lanyard and like different little pins and all the cute little things. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I had never heard of these." Like, that's crazy. And so I did more research and I was like, this is such a valuable thing. I was like, I wish I would have known about this sooner, especially like traveling, because I get so many people when I'm traveling at the airport that like refuse to let me carry on my medical equipment with me. And so, I wish I would have been able to utilize this so that they would be able to see this and respect it and know that, this is true. Because me just telling them, like, hey, these bags are full of medication, ostomy supplies, like, I can't check these at all. Like, if I need these, I need to have them with me. And just because I had one extra bag being hooked up to my medicine counted as a bag, and then I had my ostomy stuff in a tote bag, and then my TPN I carried on in a carry-on suitcase. And they told me I had one too many bags and I needed to check one. And I was like, I refuse. And so like they literally told me to like stand over here, and they were so rude to me. Like I've never been so like afraid to fly. This was like maybe my third time flying. I was flying by myself. I was trying to get to a conference that, I was interning for, and I honestly almost missed my flight because they wouldn't let me get on the flight without checking a bag. And so I had to check my ostomy supplies, and I was like, well,
Did you complain about that afterwards, or were you too traumatized by the experience?
I was too traumatized. In the moment, like I really didn't know what to do or what to say. Because like I said, like I'm not a typical flyer. So I don't know how that all works. I had been successful the last few times I had flown, so I didn't know that I was gonna run into this issue. And, the people were super nice with me, checking my one bag. And I told them, this is medication. They were like, hey, cool, like you're good. I was like, will I be good with one extra bag? And they were like, yeah, if it's medication, like we can't say anything about that. So, I was all set until I got to the gate, and the person at the gate was like, no, you're not getting on. And I was like, okay, one, the flight is not full. It's like 11 p.m. at night. Like, you really can't.
I can't imagine what that must feel like, getting on an aeroplane and not having the ostomy supplies, um, you know, at your side for if you need them. That must have been a horrible, horrible experience.
Yeah, I honestly, because then I was like, well, if I get to this conference, like I have to have those supplies. So if they get lost or,
Mm.
they get damaged or anything like that, I'm like, I don't know what to do. And it also had not only my ostomy supplies, but all my, tubing and vitamins and, bandages for my central line. So I was just carrying the medication that comes in the bags, just the liquid. So I was just carrying the liquid with me. So I was like, everything else was in that bag. So I was like, if I get to where I'm going and I don't have that, I will have to turn around and fly back. because I can't go without not having, the tubing to set up my medication or the alcohol pads to clean my line or the saline flushes or, like the million things that were in that bag. And, I tried to explain to her, I was like, it's medical. And she was like, well, it can't all be medical. And I was like, it is. I'm like, I'm willing to open this all up if you really want. Like, that is how adamant I was that I was like, you're not going to sit here and tell me that this is not all medical. Like, I honestly just felt like she thought that I was like a brat or like that I was trying to get my way and that I was like better than everybody else or something of that nature.
I'm sorry you went through that. It really does sound very distressing. Lynn, with passengers in the US at airports, have you had other similar stories?
I've never heard of one that has not let somebody take medical on the bag on the plane. But then again, I've never known somebody to have 3 or 4 bags of medical. But there's a lot of people with disabilities that have wheelchairs, that have other things. So, I mean, there is a lot of overhead space that they should have allowed for. So I'm sorry that happened. It's an awful experience. And I hope, I don't know how many years ago that was, but I'm hoping that there's a little bit more awareness now. I do know that, some of the American airlines are more aware of non-visible disabilities at this point. It's getting better from what I can see because there's more and more participants. And I also think that TSA, they have a TSA Cares program now, and they have been so wonderful at most of the airports with our sunflower wearers. So I hear good things about TSA now too, when you go through TSA Cares or an airport that connects with TSA.
Yeah, I've never had any issues with TSA. They've always been super sweet to me, especially like with my ostomy and my feeding tube and, having to check everything, especially if I am hooked up to my medication during that time and, like going through all my sterilized like supplies. They're always super careful with it. They've been amazing. It's just been honestly boarding. Boarding has been my biggest issue, which is like the one thing I'm like, why is that the one thing? But
Do you mind if I ask?
You are listening to the Sunflower Conversations with Chantal. To learn more about the sunflower, visit our website. Details are in the show notes.
What is the scenario like for you? Have you ever had to clean your feeding tube or change your ostomy bag whilst in the air?
I personally haven't. I don't think I would have to change my central line, but if I did start having a leak with my ostomy, which, you never know, that would definitely have to be something that I would have to do.
Yeah. So clean environments. I mean, what are you looking for when you're out and you're not in your own home space or your family? What other kind of things do you sort of go when you go somewhere? Do you go inspect the toilets first as to whether or not you're maybe going to stay or the cleanliness?
I don't feel like that bothers me as much just because like I'm just emptying my ostomy bag. It's not super crazy. But yeah, for my central line, I feel like that more so has to be more sterilized, in a clean environment. But I always, I'm more than happy to clean stuff as well. But I think too, like just finding a bathroom, like I have to know where the bathrooms are at all times because like, I have to empty my ostomy bag like once to twice every couple hours. So I'm
Oh,
like,
right, that's okay.
yeah, I'm like, that's a big thing. And
What reaction have you had from your sunflower when you're wearing it?
I get people who ask me like what it is because, not a lot of queens, represent the invisible disability community, but they do wear other pins for their social impact. So whether that's like for donation, like organ donation, or the Red Heart Foundation, or whatever it is, they'll wear their little pins. And so I love that my pin is very different. And people, don't know it. They just don't. And so, it brings up that conversation of like, well, what is that? Like, I've never seen that pin on another queen's sash or, wearing that. And so I love just, spreading that awareness just by a simple image. I also have like sunflowers on my Instagram and my TikTok next to like my name and my illnesses. And so I love just putting, the sunflower where I can, just, to get people to notice it.
And I'm glad that you found the sunflower through Ogden, because I do know the woman there at Visit Ogden, and she's been just doing a wonderful job trying to get the word out in Ogden. And it's nice to see that you found the sunflower that way. So that's good. And I appreciate you, playing it forward and getting it out to more and more people. It's great. I really appreciate it.
Everybody listening to this could please also pay it forward by sharing this recording to help just to expand people's understanding of invisible disabilities, people who have to have feeding tubes and ostomy bags, and the challenges and barriers that Shaylee has shared with us today. And I'm sure there are many more, because we haven't fully gone into the mental health side, the pain levels that you must have experienced throughout your life must have been excruciating as well. So we would really like people to share this. So what would you say to a young person who finds themselves treading a similar healthcare journey to what you've been through and is worried about their future?
I think if I could tell somebody who's navigating this just at a younger age, especially like maybe even my younger self, that you don't have to hide your differences. Your differences make you who you are, and you should be proud of them, and you should be proud of how far you've come in life. It's not an easy path, obviously, but you'll shine once you are true to yourself and are willing to share your illnesses.
That's beautiful, really beautiful. I've learned a lot. I've seen people, not lots of people, of course, but I have seen people with the bag, and they had a feeding tube, and they sort of go around their business with their bag on. But I haven't. It's the first time I've had a full conversation about it, so I feel like I've learned a lot. So I want to also say thank you personally from me for having this chat with us.
If you are interested in any of the advice discussed in this podcast, please follow up with your GP or healthcare practitioner. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it, leave a rating and review to help raise awareness of non-visible disabilities and the hidden disability sunflower. You can also follow and subscribe to the Sunflower Conversations podcast.
If you'd like to share your sunflower story or conversation, please email conversations@hiddendisabilitiesstore.com. Find out more about us or listen to this recording again by checking out our insights page at hiddendisabilitiesstore.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Please help, have patience, and show kindness to others, and join us again soon. Making the invisible visible with the Hidden Disability Sunflower.